all the turn of events that have happened, and with me being away for a little bit and stuff, I realized that I haven't given much attention to this particular month. What really blessed me was I heard somebody say that February was just 1 month. They're black all year round, and they're just blackity black during the month of February. And many of you don't understand or don't really know maybe some of my perspective. I was interviewed just recently by a very prestigious podcast host, but also I've done other things in the past. I'm a part of the Aspen Institute of Racial Equality. I was one of the persons that they used to do their story and do their research on critical race theory years ago, where I was brought into a room with some of the leading dignitaries, political, social activists, political figures, lawyers, judges, former mayors, 6 or 7 former mayors, and spent 2 days intense. I've given you history in the past. I've never shied away from black history per se. There was a message that I preached that kind of went viral amongst several pastors called America Done Got Woke. And I preached that during the pandemic. And it opened some doors for me for a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of stuff. But I think that how many would like to have my perspective on some of the issues in America as it relates to black people? And I'm going to allow Mark to interview me. He probably has a selection of questions, because tell them about your organization and what you do, which I'm an honorary board member of. Tell them about what your plight is and what your goals are with your organization, and then we'll get right into the interview.
Thank you, Bishop. We are the CARES Justice Institute. CARES is an acronym that stands for Community Alliance for Restorative, Educational, and Social Justice Institute, and we are a social justice agency that moves on the plight of any level of racism, systemic, structural, institutional, personal. We also try to address policies, procedures, processes, and practices that seem to be unfair and unjust, disparities, inequities, inequalities, anything that touches the social determinants of health that doesn't give people of color, especially blacks, an opportunity in America. And so our job is to go in and to address those from the boardrooms and from with the policymakers. And in some cases, you know, we might march with others, but we're definitely behind the scenes. And so we appreciate the opportunity to make a difference. And then while we're doing that, we're bringing transformation and empowerment to those people who have been historically marginalized. So not just dealing with the policymakers, but on the other side saying, hey, let's get ready. So when opportunity comes, we're ready.
And so, actually, if you just heard the definition of who he is and what he does, what the organization does, it really is the basis of critical race theory. It's a scholarly approach to understanding some of the systemic ills and some of the racial disparity and some of the things that occur in this country that was implemented in this country intentionally. And I think there's no argument that this country is dealing with systemic poverty, systemic racism as a result of institutional, political, racial decisions that were made that has impacted our country negatively. And people are still pushing for this type of parity and justice for all, even today. Yes, I believe that. I'm repping FAMU today.
Baby Rattler.
Greg Coleman always tells me, he said, you don't give the Rattlers enough credit here in Florida. One of the things that has broadened my horizon, I think that has made me so palatable for both sides the issue is the universities that I attended. I attended University of Tampa, which is considered the Ivy League school of the South, and I was in political science there. Didn't know what I was doing as a young freshman. I visited campus, was on campus the first time at 16 years old. I was the youngest student on campus. Dr. Mild Lindenmeyer was the political science instructor, and I learned some things about race. 35 black students in the entire school, in the entire university, and I was one of them on full scholarship, and then left there and attended the University of Tennessee in Martin, Tennessee, and one of 500-600 blacks and about 8,000-9,000 students there. And so had some major experiences there as it relates to race, and being from Florida, the South. I moved from the South to the deep South. I thought I was Southern until I got to Tennessee. Lord have mercy. Our sheriff at that time was a man you might all know from the movies, a man by the name of Buford Pusser, and Walking Tall. And I even got arrested a couple of times there, never booked, but picked up and sat in the back of police cars for being at the wrong place at the wrong time. I've had some major issues in the South as a young teen growing up there, and maybe during our discussion and our interview we'll bring up some of those because there are a lot of people who want to know a pastor's perspective on how to deal with that, having the reality of history, and then see how it relates to his story. Because our job is to preach his story, but not to exclude history. And I think we can share the pain of the past, but also be healed by the power of his presence. And so many people don't get that, and I think a lot of pastors probably need to hear that, because some will call you a sellout if you don't march, if you don't get out there and do all these type of things. Bishop Van Gaten was supposed to be here with me today. I was going to invite him to be here. Of course, you know, as radical as they come. And I wanted that dialogue, but he's actually marching in Tallahassee, and he's marching to save black history. And it's in response to our governor's declaration about black history being taught. And so I wanted that kind of radical voice, and I wanted to be stretched, because I wanted to be stretched before you. Because if you may have noticed, a large part of our church are black people. And and I do think that before you need to know that I'm black all year long, but this month I'm blackity black. All right? Let's go.
Well, you know, Bishop, you talk about that. One of the things, a couple of things that we deal with, we just did a COPE simulation. COPE stands for cost of poverty experience, and it deals with poverty and the insensitivity of the opportunities for people of color in this country. We also deal with things with the criminal justice system, and how many people say the system isn't broken, that the system was created this way because of the disgust of the Jim Crow laws, when we have opportunity to see restoration in America in the Reconstruction era, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, and then here we are 100 years later getting a Voters' Right Act. Well, it was 15th Amendment gave us the right to vote, so why are we needing Lyndon B. Johnson to do that type of signature? So those are the things that are frustrating. So Bishop, my question is, covering hundreds of pastors, many of them being, again, nomenclature, black pastors, who are frustrated because here we are in this vicious cycle, and we have no unity, even though the president of our board is the one who gave me my scholarship, my 5-year scholarship to the university, the special university. And what is it that you say to black pastors who are marching, who are frustrated, who do hear a governor say that he's cutting out AP? What do you say, and how do you handle those encounters?
You know, that was a major issue with me, because it seems like every time healing begins, somebody pulls the scab off the wound and it bleeds again. The pain comes back. I think every pastor, and you got to remember, as Christian pastors, we've been born again, and we now have an inclusive message. God is not discriminatory. God is not a racist. Whosoever will, let him come. For God so loved the world, everybody in it. He's an equal opportunity God, period. And he's a God who is concerned about justice, because the scripture says all his ways are justice. And he is a fair God. And in him there are no evil ways. And so pastors, man, they lead a people like I lead a people, like I lead you guys. And you guys have your own experiences. You guys have experienced the lingering effect of redlining and the ghettos and how they came apart. And some of you thought, and some black people think they'll never get out of the hood. They'll never do these things. And then when we do make progress and things do occur and we're preaching the gospel, but we have the pain of our past and a memory. And when we see blatant injustice, it's our job as prophets, as spokesperson for God, to speak truth to power. All right? But not everybody's called to civil rights activation. Not everybody is called to hit the streets. I was called so many times during 2020 about all of the uprising and the George Floyd stuff and this and that. I didn't see you. Where were you? Well, I was manning my post. I was manning my post. I was doing what God called me to do. I can't leave the 99. I can't leave the flock uncovered. I couldn't leave feeding the flock. I'm called to feed the flock of God and to take the oversight, right? So that's what I'm called to do. When the new president of the NAACP took office, he called me before he took office. And I told him, I said, listen to what's happening. This is the national president. I said, when you do this, and he's a pastor, I said, when you do this, you're putting a bullseye on your chest and on your back, right? This is a job for martyrs, right? For the cause. You have to be willing to die on this hill, all right? So this is your call. I won't be with you physically, but I'll be with you emotionally, spiritually, prayerfully. These things need to be done, but we can't leave the others undone. So I say to pastors all the time, raise up some people from your church. Support people like yourself, what we're doing here. Support them. Be a part of what they're doing, but do what God has called you to do. Our problem comes when we try to be Martin Luther King, when we try to be Stokely Carmichael, when we try to, Stokely was a good friend of mine, when we try to be those people and live their legacies rather than leave our own legacy, right? So yes, there's injustice. Yes, there's stuff that agitates, irritates, and we have to be able to answer it truthfully, rightly, justly, by fulfilling the call of God on our life. And I think I shared the other day that imagine if everybody would not complain about unemployment, but do something about unemployment. Not complain about the school system, but do something about school system. So when we saw the blackness community, the prostitution, the drugs and stuff over here, let's use this as an example because we have an example. We were nobody. We were a handful of black folk that just believed in transformation, that God can transform lives and he can transform communities. So instead of complaining about employment, we offered employment. But even being overlooked in the banks for loans and houses and stuff, we started our own bank. You know, I mean, it was amazing. I was in the class the other day with the pastors, and a couple of the pastors that have come to my Wednesday meeting, I financed their houses, you know, years ago. Wow. You know, stuff like that. We have 243 full and part-time employees right now, which makes us the second largest employer in the west side of Jacksonville, wow, in this area. I mean, and predominantly black. 25 to, my wife corrected me, I said 20%. She said almost 35% of our employees are ex-felons. For example.
Formerly incarcerated professional. Formerly incarcerated professional. That's it. Let's fix that.
For example. Educationally, the school system was not what it should be. So we started our own, and we're able to teach these kids. I had my grandson with me last night, and just reciting stuff. He's learning so much at a young age in an environment that's conducive for the preaching of the gospel and putting the seed of righteousness in them and keeping them protected from the world, to go out into the world to develop them. And so I think that we just need to, pastors don't need to panic, don't need to push the button, because in essence, we're not really going to be able to change everything. That beloved community is a far-fetched. We'll see pockets of it and we'll see things happen, but we're not going to change the world and then Jesus going to come.
Right.
We're going to not be able to change it and then Jesus going to come.
Right.
Because he's going to come and get us. But in the meantime, we have to do all we can. We have to educate so that we can emancipate people. We have to instruct people so that we can inspire people to become the best them that they could be, best citizens. But we don't have to forget that God made us different. Yes, we don't have to forget that this country was built upon the backs of people who were brought here and forced into slavery and who have experienced injustice from day one in this country. And we can't act like it didn't happen, all right? But his story, and I think I shared with you the other day that my Christianity trumps my nationality in the sense that I have never forget my nationality, but my Christianity, my relationship with God, is what leads me and guides me, and I do affiliate and relate to. That's the Bible was clear, Jews and Gentiles, right? So we understand that, but we also have to, again, pastors, stick to your guns. Support those in your community and even in your church that are actively involved in civil rights, and keep preaching the gospel so that people, if they never get emancipated on this side, they'll be emancipated for eternity. All right?
Bishop, you said something to the extent, from a Christian standpoint, we live like Jesus is coming tomorrow and we work like he's not coming back. Right. And I think that's what's been a blessing to me, and the support that you've given to CARES and some of the efforts. And I think, I've said to you, the palace and the pavement, the sanctuary and the street, yeah. and that balance is there. That compatibilism is not either or, but it's both and you've given us that that push and that inspiration. Bishop, but a lot of times there's some parallelism between three compartmentalized statements that a lot of times people get confused. They link them and they don't know how to address them. And when they address them incorrectly, it causes more confusion. And those three areas are social justice, civil rights, and racial equality.
Right.
Or racial equity.
And what happens is that the line is crossed on each one and they lump them all together. There are people who think that the whole aspect of social justice, civil rights, and racial equality are just one and the same, but they're distinct. When you talk about social justice or social inequities, you're talking about a lack of parity as it relates to resources, that we can't have certain resources. When people talk about social justice, and let's say folk on the right hear social justice, here's what they hear: socialism. That everybody wants equal everything, that we will become a Nazi kind of world, a Marxist kind of world where everybody is equal and you've got just a few at the top and we're controlled by the government and all those type of things. But that's not what it is. Jesus actually came and said, not only am I here to open the blinded eyes, set captives free, but to declare the acceptable year of the Lord. Right? What that is a perpetual jubilee where people receive back everything they've lost, where people get blessed, debts are canceled, and those type of things. All of that is involved in the preaching of the gospel, and all of that is what social justice is all about. So social justice deals basically financially and with resources. And then you got civil rights. The civil rights basically are political. It's a political, gubernatorial type of thing, to where we march, we push the margins farther and farther, adding amendment after amendment, making sure that the amendments are lived out, that these are our rights as human beings. You mentioned the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, and you mentioned the 15th was concerning voting rights, right? But the 14th Amendment is an amendment that declared that black people were fully human and equal to white folk.
Right.
All right? And then the 13th Amendment deals with the abolishment of slavery, and that we're now free people. And for some people to act like there is no systemic anything, when we had to make amendments to the Constitution just to be accepted as fully human, and that we make sure that the freedom of slavery is really implemented in the land. And in some states right now, in Mississippi, black people still are not considered completely human. I have a church in Alabama, and in Selma, Alabama. Selma, Alabama's budget is about $1 million more than our church budget. Can you imagine? A predominantly little black town in Alabama, southern Alabama, and literally our church budget is just a little less than their city budget. And they have to run a town. They have to run a city on that type of budget and live that way. A tornado just ripped through there and literally took a third of the town away, and we're sending resources and stuff over there. My pastor church there, his congregation, the houses just flew away like the Wizard of Oz. And there's no real support. The governments, the states not in. I mean, you know, it's still, that stigma is still there, and we're still fighting those type of things. It's still intensely prejudiced and racist. I walk across the Pettis Bridge. I've been there many times. I stayed in a hotel on the Pettis River, on the bridge right there, right at the bridge, the hotel right at the bridge. I was in the room that night. This is the God Heaven Truth. This is a great story. I was in that room that night, and I had heard the stories about the cries or the voices that come up out of that river, where people were beaten and killed and hanged and flogged to death and thrown in that river. And they said at night you can hear the voices of them crying from the river, you know, the voices of the past and this and that. And I'm not a scary person. Until that night. Man, I checked out of that hotel and ran all the way across town to one Hampton Inn. They got one other hotel over there. I stood at the desk. When they came the next morning to get me, I was not at that hotel. I was over at the Hampton Inn. But being in that hotel caused me to reflect, caused me to think about the injustices and the things that shouldn't have occurred based on the 13th, the 14th Amendment. Should not have occurred just based on the Constitution itself, that all men are created equal. Just based on the fact that God made us in his likeness and in his image. And we have people who are human and supposed to be civilized who can't grasp that. And people who think they're superior because of the lack of melanin in their skin. That a whole continent, evidently, I think a lot of this wouldn't happen had they discovered Wakanda just a little bit earlier. Because they got to realize our technology and our vibranium is enough to, no. I'm sorry.
You alluded to something earlier about 2020 with George Floyd. And we know that we saw that 8 minutes, 46 seconds there was with a non-black officer kneeling on the neck of a black man. But then in Memphis, Tennessee, we saw black officers assaulting a black man. But when the news came out, when propaganda hit, it said that it was racism, and they were both racism.
Right.
And how, from the church, as a global general, do you address that both of those were racism, or what was it really?
Well, that puts things in perspective for me about what's broken in the system, right? Because what happens is the men that killed the guy in the city in which I was married in, for the hometown of my wife, Memphis, Tennessee, were black, right? And so many people were attacking police forces in general, whole police forces, because of what happened to George Floyd, Caesar, etc. I just keep going back and back and back.
Sir.
And no policing, defund the police and all this kind of stuff. And literally when you saw what happened in Memphis, you almost got to say, don't defund the police, fund the police with education and training so that they'll know how to handle the situation right. That fund the police department with psychiatric and psychological workers and doctors and stuff to process these people before we put them out on the street and make sure that they are not violent themselves. So we have former police officers in here. I have 2 sitting around on the front row in here. And I would easily throw them the microphone and tell you, they could probably tell you the training or the lack of training or some of the people that they worked with that should not have been police officers. And it's an individual thing, I believe. It's not that's not something that I would jump on and say the whole Jacksonville Police Department is racist. The whole so-and-so police department is racist. They're individuals on the forces that have problems. I wouldn't just basically call it racist, but they have anger issues. They have psychological disorders. There's something that takes place there. In some cities, little small towns and other places, and even big cities, I think there's some corporate racism going on, but that's discrimination against certain sides of town and people of color and racial profiling and all that kind of stuff. That's real. I've been pulled over several times, racial profiling. I'm a little light-skinned boy too, like they still knew I wasn't white, but they pulled me over and big old satellite disc on the head. Boy, you know how fast you was going? Sir, I was doing the speed. You telling me I'm wrong, boy? How you gonna call a grown man boy? What's wrong with you? And I don't argue with him. I ain't stupid, I ain't stupid. Now, I ain't never said, yes, sir, master, but I didn't argue with them because I knew I was, and a lot of people can't relate to that, and especially the majority race, and that's the problem in our country too, is that the majority is no longer the majority. And the fear, and I think that's the fact that, as I heard it said, we're losing our nation to black and brown people and red people, and it's no longer our nation. We have to get our nation back. And I think that's a major issue when people at the top think that way, when our lawmakers think that way, when our justice think that way. So I think we do have issues in America, and I think some of our police departments need a lot of help. Our police officers, they're stressed, they're strained, they need a lot of help. Quick example, I was stopped down in Osceola County. I was not speeding. I actually was trying to get around this car, and I got real close to it, and I flashed my lights so that it would move. And I had no idea that it was an unmarked police car. And when I hit my lights again, he hit his lights and directed me over to the side of the road. And when we got over to the side of the road, it was a big, power-lifting black guy. He was huge. And he came to the window, and we came to the window. I said to him, listen, officer, I am absolutely so sorry. You know, like I know, had I known that you was an unmarked police car, that I would not have flashed my lights or tried to push you off the road. So I'm so sorry. With all the stuff that's going on out here, I am so sorry. I hope I did not offend, or I hope just do your job, do what you got to do. But sir, I am not going to argue with you. Too much going on out here in the world. Listen, this man looked at me and he said, "Thank you." I said, "What happened?" He said, "I just pulled over someone recently, a white woman, and she gave me the 10th degree about I racially profiled her." And it's so tense. This is after George Floyd and everything. You know, the whole world is tight. It's just tense. And he just said, it's tough out here. He said, I'm thinking about retiring, just getting off these streets because it's dangerous out here. Right now, you know what to do. He said, but just the way you talk to me, I didn't feel, intimidated, no conflict. I needed that. I needed somebody to tell me or to speak to me civilly. And you did just that. That's how intense it is out there, right? This guy here is huge, right? And I give you his name, but he's officer, and we've connected. And about a month later, I couldn't sleep. I had to pull out the warning ticket he gave me to find his name. And I found his name, and I called the sheriff of Osceola County because I couldn't find him. And I asked for Officer Owens. I asked for his name, and I cashed out him $1,000 to take his family on vacation, to do whatever he got to do. And it wasn't because he didn't give me a ticket. It was just in our conversation, I understood he was overworked and underpaid, and he's risking his life every day. And found out he's from Jamaica and that he loves oxtails. And so there it is. Drove up, I'm coming. And we become great friends now. When I go to Osceola County, I go down there, I spend time with him, still encouraging him. But he did resign from the police force because of the stress. And so there's stress. There's so much going on that you just can't write everything off as racist. You just can't write everybody off as being some kind of way systemically influenced by the powers that be, because we're all individuals. You don't go out here and steal and rob no more. And so, hallelujah. And neither do I, all right, anymore, because we've been changed. And so I know I have been changed.
But Bishop, you're an anomaly though, because I've been in the car with you and we've been pulled over, and he jumped out the vehicle. And so I'm going to jump out with him. And lady told me, two of us going to tell this story. And
look here, this is the I gotta tell it. I gotta tell it.
She told me, close that door.
We were in the car. I took off on 10. I hit about 100. I was getting on the highway.
For a long time, he was getting
and then it went, woo! And police officer stopped way behind me. I'm up here in the front. He's in the back seat, my wife in the front. And so I stopped. He gets out the car, puts his hat on, he gets out the car. And so I said, I'm going back there. And he didn't ask me to get out, didn't tell me to get out. I jumped out. I jumped out the car. My wife said, what are you doing? He in the back seat like, I'm getting over. She said, no, you get down. And so I got out of the car and started walking toward the police officer. Then I thought, I don't have my wallet. I went back to the front seat, opened and reached down, reached back into the car in the seat to get me. And my wife like, Jesus, I love Jesus. And I said, lady, you know I'm gonna have to run now. You realize that? This is a true story. And then I came back, and as I approached him and got close to him, tell him what the man did. He said, Bishop. He said, I just left the bistro. He said, slow that thing down, man. Get on down the road. keep them oxtails coming. Big old white cop, just keep on oxtails coming. You can't tell me oxtails won't fix racism. What's wrong with you? You just need some smothered pork chops and some chicken, and racism is gone. Right out the window, but it was good.
But so Bishop, last weekend we've got the COPE simulation officers there trying to bring take away some of the parity and disparity in the emotions against officers. Next weekend with a predominantly white church with Bethune-Cookman doing a project because we've got to lift up voices of the so-called majority. But in the meantime, stuff's still happening. They're still riding the streets. They're still harassing. They're still doing some stuff. But you've got real experience. How did you get better and not bitter?
Yeah. I tell people all the time, I said my experiences made me better, not bitter. When I was 17 years old, I was confronted by the Ku Klux Klan and Alvin Smalls and myself. And they literally ran us for over a mile. We got back to our campus, dorm down in Tampa, and we were shook up. I mean, absolutely shook up, and hoods and everything, you know. And as a 17-year-old, away from home, away from mama, frightened and confused, which way will you choose? And so, runaway child, running wild. So I got back, and I remember the trauma what that did to me. It was unbelievable. Then I went to Tennessee, and my roommate, Jimbo Edwards, had never met a black person before in his life. And I walked into the room. I had a scholarship. He scholarship. I was basketball. He was baseball. And I walked into the room, and he said the N-word. He said, "You're in the wrong room." And I was like, he had Budweiser cans stacked up, a little lit. And I said, "No, you in the wrong room. You know, I'm from Florida, in Tennessee. He's a little bigger and drunk." So I thought twice about, jumping over there, because folk drunk, they get that,
Yeah,
they
super
get
strength.
super strength. They're drunk, they don't even know what's going on. They take a lick and that's all you got. You sober, you hit, ow, man. And so we started talking to each other, and he started telling me stuff about black people, and all you black people smell, all you black people stink, and you got tails, and you got this and that. And I know my granddad. That's why I came up with that law of first truth, where, some people are not bad people. They're badly influenced by bad people. And so his grandfather was a racist, his father was a racist, and they taught him those things. And why would they lie to him? This boy believed this. And so we went through all that together, and make a long story short, I visited his home, Atwood, Tennessee, home of the Klan, went to a Klan picnic by accident. Had some other issues and stuff that went on there in college at Tennessee, had a lot of issues. And by the time everything was over, at the end of 3.5 years of being with him, it was like Brian's song. I had broken all of his stereotypes. I had helped him with his homework. We hung out together. We ate together. I was the first black person to ever go to his home. When I went to his home to eat, when I ate at the table, and his little brother was sitting there like this, looking at me, flipping his pea, his mother took my plate and put it separate from the other plates, as if to dispose of it, because I had eaten off of it. So there I was, and these things in my head, these things in my mind. I left on a street corner, trying to get back home to see my mama, who I hadn't seen in about 2 years. I had my trunk with me, taking it home to do some things, and the bus driver came up, a Trailway bus driver came up. I'm standing there getting ready to get on the bus, and he says, "I don't ride on my bus," and left me on that street corner with a dime, at a dime. And I had to stay out there for another 7 hours in the smoldering heat of Corinth, Mississippi. Red clay hills with one store in town and the gas station. And the guy was supposedly the sheriff, and he's sitting there on a rocker with his rifle on his lap. And I wouldn't say anything to him. I was so thirsty and hungry that I said, I need something to drink, and I have a dime. And back then, you put a dime in. If mama don't answer, you get your dime back. And so I had put that dime in there so many times, and they just weren't answering the phone. And so finally, they could see I was parched. And he said, get you something to drink. Go around and go right. The store was right there. And I started going to the store. He said, you go around the back, boy. I went to the back door and I stood there and I looked at it and I saw everybody moving around, but nobody came to me. Nobody said anything to me. I'm crying. I'm hurt. I'm scared. And finally somebody came and they handed me a styrofoam cup, some plastic cup with some water in it, but I was just thirsty. And the way they handed it to me, I didn't drink it. And there's some other things that occurred. My wife and I were on a bus, Trailway bus, on our way back to Tennessee from Florida. She made a visit and had a billboard sign, "Keep America Beautiful," killing, you know, and the bus driver was driving on the back of the bus like this. They had a black bus driver and the sign was like this. He was driving from the back of the bus. These images and these things were in my head, and they're real things, right? I can let that make me bitter, or I can let that make me better, right? I could live as a victim and with some form of victimization, and they did this to me and that to me, and I haven't forgotten. It's just the fact that I met a man. I met somebody who took and takes all of my experiences in life and basically erases it from the record of controlling me and makes me a new creature in Christ, to where the pain, the history is there. It just doesn't hurt. You know, it hurts me to see it still going. It hurts me as a black person to see discrimination. It hurts me to see systemic conditions in our land that is simply because of race. It hurts me to see some of the stuff that goes on, but it doesn't hurt me, and it doesn't muddy my message. It doesn't make me become so defensive that I begin to change my theology and maybe preach a social gospel or just a liberation gospel, even though the gospel deals with social and liberation. I still know that there's one message. Christ came, he lived, he died, was buried, rose again the third day according to the scriptures, seated at the right hand of the Father, ever living to make intercession, and he's coming back again. I believed that story one day, and it changed my life, and it took away the sting, like death. Christ took the sting out of death. So the sting of the history of my past, the sting of drinking colored water, the sting of not being served at the counter at Woolworth, the sting of running from playing for my life just because I'm black, the sting of having a roommate that calls me all, you know, the sting of those things that I can go back and say, you know what, man, I should be hard at everybody. Don't you look at me like that. No, it calls me to love. It calls me to the change that I've had in my life. The gospel makes me able to love everybody and to not treat anybody by the color of their skin or the judgment, but by the content of their character, and deal with everybody individually instead of corporately. And so to say that an entire race is wrong, that an entire police force is wrong, that an entire institution is wrong, that an entire thing is wrong, I think is wrong. And I think because they're good people and they're individuals, as a gospel preacher, that I am assigned to reach with my message. And I can't reach them if I can't love them. All right? And so I got to love them.
Bishop, you said something earlier that I thought we kind of moved past it, about the balance of understanding history. I know a lot of times when we talk about black history, we look at the plight and we look at, all of the pathos that Black Americans had to deal with specifically that was pushed on them. But last year you gave me the opportunity to minister while you were out of town, and I did some research, and I found so many contributions that Black people have made to America. And I think sometimes we need to focus on that than all of the negative, because then it would give young Black people, it would give individuals an opportunity to say, hey, we've done a lot of great things, and we can continue to do great things and not live out the narrative that they've spoken against us.
This is what we discussed, and that's really good. That's really one good point. That's really what I would want to emphasize during Black History Month every year. The accomplishments of Black people in this nation that have been whitewashed, that have been kept from us, that people don't know. That's why the big issue right now in the march in Tallahassee, that we can teach history and Black history and the things that Black people have done to build this nation. I mean, the inventors and the inventions, we can start naming them. You name them, who built this, who did that, the light bulb, the this and that, the this and that, the elevator, all this kind of stuff. We have to understand. I went to Carter G. Woodson, and that man did more with the peanut than Joe Washington Carver. I'm with Joe Washington Carver, Carter G. Woodson was a great educator. George Washington Carver was an inventor. He had yoga made stuff out of peanut. My wife asked me the other day, my favorite food, if I'm watching a game or doing something, and if you ever want to know, I take unsalted roasted peanuts, unsalted, turn the oven on broil, put them peanuts in that oven, turn them one time, let them get nice and almost burnt brown. Pull them out of the oven, take a little salt and put it right on the pan and sit there for hours just eating peanuts. And I think the reason is I went to George Washington Carver, and I think I studied.
That's it. But no, I feel the anointing on that.
I felt the anointing. But the inventions, and then let's bring it home. See, a lot of people, I've had people that said, even during the crises, where are you out here, right? And I go like, I got assaulted one time for something. The ACLU came after me and a couple other folk about my affiliation and my party affiliation and stuff, which now I'm NPA, all right? But at the time, I was registered Republican. And the reason I was registered Republican, because I was high when I went to register to vote with about 6 other people, and they all voted registered Democrat. I was 18. I said, I don't want to be like y'all. And so I just did that and never changed it, right? So never was a party person, never this and that. But anyway, what was I saying?
You got us. Were you getting assaulted by ACLU? Your party affiliation.
For
your party affiliation and hooking up with some people, taking some pictures, some ops, and all that stuff. I kind of remember.
What they got to do with what I was going to say?
I don't. I'm trying to get you back to where you were going. I'm not quite sure.
What was the last thing you said?
I was talking about us knowing our history, and you talked about
so knowing our history. So it was when I was assaulted by those people and attacked by some local folk that I said to them this. I said, you got to understand. No, the guy told me this. He says, we're in the trenches and you're not. I said, I'm not in the trenches? I'm not swag?
Prime time.
I'm not swag? So the deal was, I said to them, I said, here's what you guys miss. You're talking about all this injustice. We're raising up young black people that are seeing not just managers in businesses, but black-owned businesses, where we're getting education, where we're training, where they see excellence, where they experience excellence, where you can bring your kids to this place. I had a pastor that came for the funeral of my brother this past Saturday, and he walked through the building. He says, I just got a college education on cleanliness, excellence, servitude, black owned and operated businesses. He had never been over here, had never been to the mall, he experienced everything. And he was like, I didn't know that black people were doing this.
Wow.
Right? In the same city. And for some of you, your familiarity breeds contempt. It's kind of common to you. But when somebody who's never seen it come in, and what about our young people who can see black owned and operated businesses that we accomplish some things? And we've got our kids that have graduated from our school that are now doctors and lawyers and all kinds of philanthropists and air pilots and all this kind of stuff. We've raised them up here because they saw what they could become. And I think that we make history. We make history. And so we're doing that ourselves. And for some of you that are part of this ministry, even the people that are watching at home, I do realize that now this is streamed live. And sometimes we get some very negative responses, or people. It gets reported to me, some great lady comes on and, they don't know you. When people don't know you and that's why I always say about the middle of a message. That's why I always talk about being on time. Because if you don't even get the introduction, you may miss something that could answer your question. But if you zone out, or if you're not here, or if you come into the middle of something, I never forget, I was on the radio and I was talking about Mormonism. And I was talking to a Mormon, and the Mormon said, we believe in many gods. Well, the lady turned her radio on when I said, we believe in many gods. And I got this letter saying that she thought I was Christian. She thought I was Orthodox, but I believe in many gods. No, she came in on me saying, speaking third person, that the Mormons believe in many gods. So people need to hear the whole story, right? People need to get it all. And where we are in this city, and where we are right now, is people don't know our whole story. And the pastor that came by the other day, he had only heard, but he says, like Bathsheba, Queen of Sheba, now I heard, but now I've seen. And he says, I will take back a good report.
Amen.
And if I have I'm worried about my phone, he texted me the night and said, I would want to know if I could bring my staff and my people over and they can learn. He said, I got an education. I want them to get an education and learn. And what we're here in the city to do is to do just that. I've been very unselfish. I've not self-promoted. We could do a whole lot of other things, but we decide to be genuinely who we are. Even today, somebody may have a challenge with some of my commentary, or with some things that Mark has said, or maybe pro-Mark and anti-Vaughn, or pro-Vaughn and anti-Mark because of one slip of the tongue, or maybe something that was quoted wrong, instead of the overall message and manifestation of what the message can produce. And the one thing I want to say to the Potter's House International Ministries that meets here on Normandy Boulevard in Lenox is simply the fact that you have a manifestation with your message. There are so many people who want to be prophetic who are really pathetic, because prophetic ministry says that this wasn't here, it was spoken, and now it's here. All right? Glory. Let me just say this. And Bishop Gayton, I was going to have him here this morning, is marching in Tallahassee. I want to hear that voice, right? We need, as black people, to be reminded where we come from, what we've been through, and what we're going through. We cannot lay down and sit down. We cannot act like nothing's happening. We can't just be so Christian that we're no earthly good. But Christianity addresses these issues, and the gospel addresses these issues. As a senior pastor and founding pastor of a local church, and a bishop in the large church leading other pastors, I have to stay in my lane, and I want y'all to know that. But you just need to know that I ain't oblivious, and I'm not blind to the things that are going on. So when I see the marchers and get the letters and do stuff, I respond. And I hit back to them and say, I got you, good job, keep doing what you do. And then I've got the respect of a lot of these guys, because they know that they can point to us as a model of black excellence and success as a people, come on, who follow That's why it's good to be a part of something like this, but I can't be everywhere and do everything. And I think that was the basis of me wanting to share like this today, is that you just need to know that I am well aware, I understand, and I have something to say about it, but I also am being about it. I have something that I need to be doing because I'm trying to save as many young black people as I can early, so that they can endure all of this stuff that's going on. Because with the advent of social media, we are being propagated to death. There's so many lies and opinions and so many facts and theories out here that the truth has been lost. Truth is being trampled in the street. There is an objective truth. There is the truth of God's word. There is one truth for everybody throughout all history, ever since mankind has been in existence. It's that meta-narrative of the creation, the fall, and redemption, that God made everything and it was good. Man messed it up, but Jesus fixed it up. And that is our biblical worldview. If you only see it through your nationality, if you only see it through your caste or through your class, if you only see it through your poverty, if you only see it through your pain, it's going to skew your existence, and it's going to skew the way you relate to people who may have crossed your path for you to present to them the same gospel that saved your life and the same God that delivered you. Come on, and the same God that we're going to live with eternally together. For the record, I hate racism. And I hate when I see it blatantly done. I recognize it when I see it. And by the grace of God, because of my vast experience and because of the word of the Lord in my mouth, I basically respond properly. There have been times where I've gotten very radical and had to say some things because it wasn't a spiritual encounter. I was face to face with evil, and I had to speak truth to evil and had to confront. And I have been in a couple of real close physical, almost physical altercations simply because of the evil in the other person. And so I had to step back because I did not want to be on TMZ and CNN and everywhere else. And how many of y'all have had to avoid some of those encounters? Because, you know, you got your sign, you about to bust somebody in the head with it. And I love what I do. I love you. I want to be balanced. I don't mind being asked questions. We can probably take some of these times sometimes and maybe even ask the questions that need to be asked. And some of you have heard us talk today. You might process it. But this wasn't an exhaustive lesson on Black history and Black History Month. This is just me giving you some answering questions from Mark about, you know, the plight of Black people and systemic poverty, racism, social injustices and stuff that take place. And that last one we didn't talk about was racial equity, where it is racial equality. The social deals with the distribution of wealth and stuff and things. The civil rights deal with political or gubernatorial type of things and our rights as human beings. And then racial equity is equality of all races. When you say racial equality, you're talking about all races. And I was a part of the Aspen Institute of Racial Equality and was able to figure out how do we get along with everybody. And how does everybody get treated fairly? Reparations are real, you know. We gave reparations to the Indians. We gave reparations to the Japanese as we dropped the bomb on them, you know, did what we had to do. And you know, nothing for slavery. Whether that's an argument, whether that's something that needs to be addressed or needs to be given. I got my 40 acres. I'm just looking for my mule. You know, and you can't get yours and then tell everybody, well, I got mine, you get yours. No, we're a community. We're in this thing together. And everything I have, I share and I give away. I tell you all the time, this is your facility, this is your mall, this is your property, this is the proprietorship. You need to take ownership. You need to know that this could not have been done without the sweat equity of people combining. Some of y'all that just came on the scene, you ain't been around here but like 6 months, couple of years. Don't try to take nothing home with you. Because you may not understand what I just said. Some of us worked hard to put this stuff together. Don't come around here not talking about, well, as a member, that's my church. Yeah.
Bishop, we're in the youth sanctuary. Can I ask you one question with 30 seconds and you prophesy?
Yeah.
We were on the podcast and we did a I Say, You Say.
Yeah.
And I want people to hear it. Connect with us, Cares Justice Institute. But I asked you to finish the sentence in the youth sanctuary. Little black boy.
Oh, they do this question and answer where they just say something. So he said, little black boy, what comes to my mind? I said, little black boy, pull your pants up and be somebody. Pull your pants up and respect your elders. Pull your pants up and go to school and get an education. Pull your pants up and subject yourself to the powers or to the authorities that be. Pull your pants up. And I did some other thing. Put down the gag, put down the gun, and pick up a book and learn. Just don't allow the world to shape you and to mold you. Don't throw up signs and things because you're heroes and you're people, and that's propaganda, and that's what we do. What we behold, we become. So it is our responsibility, of Psalm 78, to train our children, to raise them up, to model for them what it means to be loving and caring and kind. And my grandson spent the evening with me yesterday, and every time I get him, my whole purpose is to imprint and to put something indelibly in his spirit that he'll be able to say, my grandpa taught me this, and it's going to make him a better man. It's going to make him a better man and a better citizen of both the kingdom and this planet, because we walk as dual citizens. You were incarcerated for 5 years, because of your own doing, so don't blame nobody.
Yes, sir.
Accept it. Take it like a man. Larry, take it like a man. All right, so you were there. I wanted to say to you, I love you. We got to get out of here. I see Truella in the back. Truella lost her sister. I just saw that on my phone this morning, and our prayers are with you. I know what that's like to lose a sibling now. I had never lost one until last week. And so our prayers are with you and Vernon. She's in Virginia. Are you going up there? Okay, well, we got you. We're praying for you. Thank you, everybody. Those of you that supported me in the celebration of life of my brother. I wrestled with that last Sunday. And I think many of you wrestled. And one of the things that the preacher said, he went back and watched that service, and he said, I want to thank you for teaching. Watch this, because some of you're a little touched. He said, I want to thank you for teaching your people how to emote in public. Because preachers and spiritual leaders have a tendency to try to put their best foot forward and try to act like ain't nothing wrong. But see, emoting is a part of who I am and what you do. Jesus emoted. Can you imagine what they said about him when he started crying at Lazarus' tomb? Look at Jesus. What are he crying about? That's Jesus. And so when you emote, you get that out of your system. I was able to do what I had to do for the rest of the week because I got out of what I needed to get out of. And then I just move on. All right? But you have to go through those things and wrestle. I don't care about how you look at me, snot running. I don't care about that. It is what it is. Can I get 10 people to say amen? Put your hands together for Mark McLaughlin. Thank you, Mark. Those of you that are watching at home, this is just our simple attempt to just scratch the surface. It doesn't even scratch the surface of some of the ills and some of the pathos and some of the pain that black people have experienced in this country. And still experiencing in this country. It is wrong to try to act like it doesn't exist. It is wrong to try to whitewash it. It is wrong to think that we still don't have challenges and that we're still not experiencing racism and discrimination on the daily basis. I just want you to know that we're well aware of it, but I want you to know that there is a message for this message that can heal and deliver and set free anybody that has been a victim of racism and a victim of discrimination. It really can. And I pray for those who God is raising up that are still marching, that are still working in the area of civil rights, making sure that this judicial system and making sure that our justice system and making sure that our politicians and our Senate and our Congress and even the White House, that they're aware of these things and making sure that they understand that these laws must be implemented and we must live according to the Constitution of this nation fully and clearly. And there are things that are being violated, and there are people that won't stand for it. I, for one, am not going to stand by. I am not going to stand for it. I'm going to preach the gospel and show the people that this is not right. A nation that forgets their God, who is just, is turned into hell. And that's bottom line. But when the righteous are in rule, the people rejoice. And I just want you to know, we're going to raise up righteous judges, righteous people. We can raise them up from the kingdom of God and put them in the seats of justice and see some things change. But we won't change it all. I got that. It ain't going to ever be just right and then Jesus come. It's going to be all messed up and then Jesus is going to come. He is the final judge. Amen. I love y'all.